Howdy folks, Kevin here. Today we're going to be looking at a rather obscure WebdriverIO issue that I ran into, but because it's so obscure, I felt like sharing it because those are the hardest things to figure out, is the ones that are just a little bit kind of weird. You usually don't see it in documentation because, yeah, you don't run across it all that much, so it doesn't get documented. So what's going on is I'm updating my book, and in this book I have an assertion that checks that when we try to refresh the page, an alert is shown. Let me show you. So here's the page that we're testing. If I add some information here and then refresh the page, it shows an alert. So that's what I want to test, is that when I go to refresh the page, it shows you the alert that warns you that you're reloading the page. The way I do that in the book is I just call browser refresh, and then I call browser.acceptAlert. And the thing about browser.acceptAlert is that if there is not an alert showing, this will throw an error. What we're expecting is that when we call browser.acceptAlert, that it not throw an error. Now, a couple things about this code. It is synchronous, so it's using the old synchronous library, which is what I'm updating. I'm trying to change it from synchronous to asynchronous. Another thing to note on it is that we're not calling acceptAlert directly. We're creating a function that calls acceptAlert. And the reason for that is if we called acceptAlert directly, it would throw, if it threw an error, it would throw the error before the expect library could handle it. So by passing in a function, the expect library can wrap up the error in a try-catch statement, I assume, catch it, and then give us a real error if it's thrown, except we're expecting it not to be thrown. So here's kind of the updated async version. So we put async here, we put our await there, put our await here. I'm only going to run this test because that's all I want to run. This actually, that doesn't need to be async. I added an await to this expect. And so I should probably add an await here. And then I guess I add an async here. See, this is kind of what was going on in my mind, was like, actually, because this is a function, we're passing in a function, what's that do for the expect library? So this is kind of what I was thinking. So I'm going to try to run this, and we'll see that this doesn't work. So it loads the page, types it, unsave change. Well, it works. It doesn't throw an error. So now what I'll do is I'll comment out the browser refresh. And what this should do is it should throw an error because browser.acceptAlert doesn't have an alert on the page. So it should throw an error saying that an alert wasn't found. However, and this is why you always test your tests to make sure that they fail when a line of code or a specific action is taken out. You want to make sure that your assertions are actually checking, because look, this still passes, and that's not right. I'll do something real quick just to show you that what the error looks like when it gets thrown. So this is the error that gets thrown, no such alert. An error is being thrown, which is important to recognize that, hey, this code is actually throwing an error. So this assertion should fail. The issue that's coming along is it's just not waiting the right bit for this to happen. So then I was thinking, well, what if I wrap this in parentheses and I await that? And honestly, when I was writing this code, I was really hoping this wouldn't work because it's not pretty. It's very, very not pretty. And you see it passes, and it still shouldn't pass. So on to the solution. I searched up, can you write async tests that expect to throw? The issue here is this toThrow is kind of confusing because it does have to call the function itself. So here's kind of what they were thinking, kind of in the lines of what I was thinking, but it still isn't working correctly. The key here is to use this rejects keyword. There are two callbacks, resolves and rejects, and this has to deal with promises. So you see they do promise resolve, then they use resolves, and then they do their assertion. Kind of the same thing with rejects. Promise reject, rejects, and then there's the toThrow. So what we need to do is get rid of these items So here we go. This is what we're going to want. We're not going to use await. And what we're going to do is we are expecting this to resolve without an error. So we'll do resolves. So we're expecting it to resolve and not throw an error. So now when we run, we should finally get an error showing that it didn't resolve or that it threw an error. Receive value must be a promise. Incorrect. This is why I'm covering this. We call just the command itself. We actually don't have to wrap it in a function. We don't have to wrap it in a function here. Browser.acceptAlert, when you call it, is going to return a promise. Yes, receive promise rejected instead of resolved. Rejected because of the error. Then if we add the refresh back in and run it again, it should pass. And there it is passing. So this is kind of a, you saw, even though I figured this out, I still had trouble remembering how to do it. So that's why I wanted to create the video. It's just whether to use the await here is kind of confusing. So you don't want to use the await. You want to pass this command to the expect library. It will handle the await for us and then handle all that. I want to try one quick thing. So the thing I was curious about here is if this error gets thrown, because technically we're calling this immediately and passing the result to expect. But what's going on is that the fact that it's a promise is catching the error. No. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask for your help on this. When we throw this error, is it the promise that catches the error and handles it so that it doesn't bubble up? If we just did this, I would expect the assertion not to fail. I would expect it to have a bigger issue. C value must be a function. It's an object, which is actually an error. Oh, yeah, there's that error. I don't know. It seemed to handle that okay. What my thinking is, we throw this error. Does that completely break out of all that's going on with the expect library? Or does the expect library handle that error well enough? Yeah. Anyway, this is what I wanted to show. This is how you would write an assertion that checks the browser.acceptAlert function. Because browser.acceptAlert can throw an error, we need to handle if it does. And we do that using resolves. Or if we wanted to check that it actually does throw an error, so that we want to check that an alert box didn't show, then we want to check that acceptAlert didn't throw an error. I think there's another alert command that checks to see if an alert is showing. Then we would use rejects to throw. So it should reject the promise and throw an error, and we could actually include the error information in there if we wanted to. So hopefully that was helpful. There's not much about it in the expect library. That's why I had this open. I was just checking. There's not even to throw in here. That's actually this is part of jest that the to throw comes from. I'm trying to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up this time. I hope that helped. Let me know what you think about whether the error it's caught by expect in time or not, or if maybe I still don't have this code quite right. I'm kind of just figuring this out on my own, so I could be wrong about it. But until next time, have fun testing.